80% of our good ideas come from soldiers. Unfortunately, 80% of our bad ideas come from soldiers. Hey, I am Chuck the bureaucrat, and, well, I know a guy who is looking for crazy, innovative ideas to improve Army recruiting. Hopefully, you guys know that I think that recruiting and training new soldiers is the core function of any Army. And, well, I have never worked as a recruiter. I've certainly watched the challenges that they face and the consequences when leaders become enamored with more urgent but less important matters. And so it just so happens that I know a guy who is looking for crazy ideas to improve recruiting. So today I thought I would solicit your crazy ideas and talk a bit about how these ideas work inside of a bureaucracy. First things first, the brass does not call these crazy ideas. Typically, the bureaucracy will come up with some sort of quirky branding for their ideas. Skunk works, mad scientists, total quality circles. But I'm gonna call them crazy ideas today, mainly to protect the anonymity of the people involved. So here's the next thing to understand about these initiatives from leadership to solicit crazy ideas from the field. And this is going to sound cynical, but if you want to make a contribution that makes a difference, you have to understand this. The brass are not actually looking for new, crazy ideas. To a certain extent, they're looking for confirmation that whatever scheme they're considering is already in the minds of the organization. We already saw this with the Space Force, where they spent thousands of man-hours and months of time to craft a mission statement that closely mirrors the duties that Congress directed them to perform. But that does not mean that crazy idea time is an opportunity for yes men to pipe up and prove that they already know what the boss is thinking. Instead, one of the ways that you can use this opportunity is to refine the leadership's thinking. One way to do this is by addressing an opportunity that's embedded in some sort of obvious course of action. Another way to take advantage of these crazy idea opportunities is to explore the reason that some ideas are not selected. That's because when leadership solicits these crazy ideas, they usually are in a much better place as far as having the time and willingness to have conversations about what they're really deciding. I have been in many, many situations where I have proposed ideas that, I don't know, I thought there was a pretty high probability that the leadership was going to reject them, but I did it so we could have a conversation about why not. Here's why that's important. Leadership often has some embedded goals or limitations that they're using to make their decisions. Once those unspoken issues get articulated, it becomes a lot easier to find solutions that satisfy them. All right, the next thing about crazy ideas that get adopted and become part of the culture is that the lower cost and less manpower necessary, the more likely they are to be successful. An idea that boils down to, if everybody worked harder, my job would be easier. That's not helpful. Or, if we spent $1.7 million, things might get better. Leadership does not want to just throw money away. I mean, usually. But an idea that reduces workload on the staff or can be executed at almost zero cost, now that has a shot. Hey, I don't really use the TPS report, so if you guys stopped collecting that data, I don't think there'd be a problem. And then there is one last thought before I share my crazy idea for recruiting and ask you to unleash yours. If you can tie a crazy idea to law, policy, or regulation, it is a heck of a lot easier to implement. And here is the amazing part. more times than you can imagine. That crazy idea that somebody is trotting around is already directed in guidance from higher. I don't want to bore you with it now, but I have made some unit level functions 10 times easier just by doing exactly what the regulation tells us to do. Okay. I got a lot of crazy ideas, but here's the one I want to share today. Assign recruiters to the station that is as much like their home as possible. You got a sergeant who grew up in rural Tennessee? Don't send them to Boston. You got a staff sergeant from Scottsdale, Arizona? Do not send them to Seattle. You see, if you want the Army to reflect the population of America, the recruiting station has to reflect the population in the community they are recruiting from. And I know, assigning a detailed recruiter to a station that feels like home or is home, that seems like a reward, but it's to our advantage. I could give some grotesque examples. Recruiting stations where 60% of the population speaks Spanish at home, but not a single person at the recruiting station speaks Spanish. Urban recruiting stations chocked full of white NCOs from rural locations. People who grew up dirt poor trying to explain why the children of affluent families should join the military. But all that aside, you know that there are communities where the people understand you intuitively, and what's more, you understand them. Why not leverage that as much as possible? And now, what are your crazy ideas? Leave a comment in the comments section, shoot me a note on LinkedIn Messenger, and in a little bit, I'll compile them together into a video. In the meantime, take care of each other. We need each and every one of you doing the best that they possibly can.